Okay, today we're going to be talking about slander and gender in Much Ado About Nothing. Now, the theme of slander is something that Shakespeare deals with quite frequently in his plays, and it's something that Shakespeare finds quite abhorrent. It's something that he always deals with very harshly. Now, in Much Ado, we have two situations. We have the noting, and we have the eavesdropping, and this often leads to misreports. For example, when the men come back from war in the opening scene of the play, and Claudio declares his love for Hero, and Don Pedro offers to woo her for her, and we have that all happens. We then have in the next scene, we have Antonio and Baraccio misreporting Don Pedro's plan. They say that they believe that it's Don Pedro who wants to marry Hero, and so we have this instance where there's a misreport of information. This doesn't do any damage, but it shows us how that this whole culture in Messina of eavesdropping and gossiping leads to things being miscommunicated, and that opens up the audience to the potential for the spying, eavesdropping, gossiping culture to cause problem. But then you have the whole thing of slander. So Don John plans the slander of Hero. He sets Claudio up to believe that she's been unfaithful, and this is deliberate and malicious. So the case where there's a misreport with Antonio and Baraccio, there's no malice in that. They've just misheard, they've misinterpreted, and they make a mistake. But the case with Don John, he fully intends to slander Hero because he wants to get at Don Pedro and Claudio. So that's something that's important to understand. Now, the slander of Hero kind of culminates in the denouncement of Hero. So at the denouncement, the whole denouncement scene is such an important one when looking at the play as a whole. You have these three men ganging up on her. On one woman. Interestingly, this is in blank verse. Don John has the cheek to mockingly say, "Pretty lady, I am sorry for your much misgovernment." And that's Act 4, Scene 1, round about verse line 91. Then you've got Claudio's oxymoron. Thou pure impiety. pious purity. And it ironically, this oxymoron ironically emphasizes the fact she is who she says she is. She is pure, she is pious. And so with Shakespeare giving Claudio this oxymoron, it emphasises his error, it emphasises the weight of the slander that's been made against her. Now, in Messenian society, the cure for the slander is the fraud of her death, which isn't really a death. So by declaring that she's died of the pain of the slander that's been put upon her, which is not true, it gives weight to the fact that she is pure, that she isn't, she wasn't unfaithful, and it allows her to be reborn as a true hero, the true hero that she is. So that's a little bit. I just wanted to say a wee bit about the slander ideas. It's an idea that kind of runs parallel to a lot of other themes. Now we're going to discuss gender, which is a really important theme in Much Ado. And it would have been something that carried a lot of weight to the Elizabethan audience. There's the treatment of gender is controversial, particularly for women. So you have these two characters. You've got Hero and you've got Beatrice. Hero is the conventional woman. She's submissive. She's so submissive, she's almost silent. We hardly hear her talk. In the first few scenes, she just answers very basically to the questions that are given to her. We only really hear her talking when she is alone with other women folk. She is the virgin. Willing to do her father's will. Whereas Beatrice, on the other hand, is very unconventional. And whereas Hero is willing to just, when her father says it's time for you to marry and you're going to marry the man I choose for you, when all this talk of marriage is happening, Beatrice shouts, "Cry, hey, for a husband." That is something she is not willing to do. That's Act 2, Scene 1. Interestingly, when all the talk of when Leonardo's talking to Hero about getting married, and Beatrice is there, Hero is told that her duty is to be ruled by your father. And then Beatrice mockingly, jokingly says, she puts it as, to make curtsy and say father as if you please. Then she adds, let him be a handsome fellow, or else make another curtsy and say father as if it pleased me. Beatrice is not happy about this whole idea that Hero should just marry whoever her father wants her to marry, without any knowledge of him, just that's it, it's all decided, unquestioningly. At the time, it's important to remember Queen Elizabeth I was on the throne in England. So she is, at this time, those traditional gender roles are being questioned. She herself, Queen Elizabeth herself, portrayed herself as this very strong woman, and the whole, that, for example, the speech that she has, the heart and body of a man, of a king of England. She takes that position that yes, she's a woman, but she can do as well as any king, that she's her father's daughter. And so all these ideas are really fresh in the minds of the Elizabethan audience. They're very much aware that they have a queen on their throne. And so watching a play like Much Ado About Nothing, where you have a character like Beatrice, who is really challenging that conventional idea of a woman in the society. However, an independent woman would be eyed with suspicion, as well as interest. Now, the way that Shakespeare deals with Beatrice, he makes her very witty. She challenges the male dominance through wit and humour. So when the men are joking rudely, she joins in with the jokes. When they're making jokes about cuckolds and horns, she's not shocked by the fact they're making jokes about the sexual liberty of the men. She's not shocked by it. She's not pretending it's not there. She jokes along with them, but at the same time, she doesn't debase herself. She isn't saying that that's how she lives. But as a woman who lives a life that is, she's not living like these men. She almost is able to take a moral high ground because she herself is living the life of the pious woman of her time. So we've talked about before male dominance in the society, and the men presume women are inconstant, whilst at the same time holding up Hero as that idol, as that picture of perfection, that goddess. They're still at the back of Claudio's head. They're still with Benedict, with all his jokings and his misogynistic behaviour. That idea that at heart women are unfaithful and inconstant. However, Balthazar's songs deal with male inconstancy. So Shakespeare is showing us, Shakespeare uses the songs to deconstruct the male stereotype of female unfaithfulness. And then that's further dramatised by Claudio's actions. Shakespeare shows, he portrays his men as prideful, and his women capable of deep love. So Shakespeare is taking the negative ideas of women and turning them on their head, but he's taking that whole idea of the male pride, the male dominance, the idea of male valour and the honour code, and he's turning it on its head. And in Much Ado About Nothing, it's the men who are the more flawed and weaker characters. And the women, he takes their strengths of a female character and he unites them with a lot of male strengths. So in the character of Beatrice, we have somebody who is assertive, but not aggressive. She's independent, but not insular. She's warm-hearted, but not sentimental. She's rational, but also sympathetic. What makes Much Ado different to a lot of Shakespeare's other plays is, in a lot of other Shakespearean plays, the woman is almost an example of moral virtue, and you don't so much have that in Much Ado About Nothing. We don't really have a hero's character developed to such an extent that you could say that she is an example of female virtue, because she doesn't really speak. Beatrice is what Beatrice does. She's not so much an example of moral virtue, but what she does do is she is a champion for sexual equality and female liberation. She's a very modern character. In fact, when the Victorians read Much Ado About Nothing, they hated Beatrice because they found her far too independent, and they loved Hero, whereas today's audience would think Hero is far too submissive and should fight back against what's been done to her, and they would love Beatrice even though she gets married at the end. Some feminist writers would be less happy with that. Now, So how does love change Beatrice and Benedict? So Benedict is this, at the beginning of the play, he is the traditional male patriarchal figure. He's misogynistic. But in the way that he criticizes women for having a biting tongue and being sexually light. But he changes. When he declares his love, he's willing to break with male bonds to avenge Hero's slander. Whereas Claudio never breaks bonds with Don Pedro, they always stay close. When it comes to choosing between will he believe that Hero is innocent or will he stick to Don Pedro and Don John, he sticks to the male bonds because he will believe the word of the man over the woman. Whereas Benedict is willing to change that. He's willing to, the word of Beatrice, say, I'm going to avenge her. He's willing to step up, and when Beatrice asks him to kill Claudio, he's willing to do that and break with those old bonds. Now let's look at Beatrice. She does succumb to love, but she assumes a dominant role by demanding Benedict kill Claudio. Now, although Benedict and Beatrice have been tricked into marriage, we see their unconventional roles will bring them together. And you don't get that sense with Claudio and Hero. But at the end of the play, Hero's still very silent. She still is willing to marry Claudio, this man who has publicly shamed her and slandered her, and Claudio is still making rude jokes with his mates, and he's not really broken away from Don Pedro. You get the impression he's not really learned that much from the whole incident that's happened. Whereas Benedict, by breaking with his traditional role, he's matured as a character, and you can see that Beatrice and Benedict could have a happy marriage ahead of them.